Prologue. The Pilgrimage of Shadows. The wolves of the northern pack have learned the rhythm of her footsteps, not out of pity but curiosity. Every morning, as the frost paints the valley silver and the wind bites through the bare trees, they gather along the ridge to watch her climb the hill again. Always the same hour, always the same resolve. Bianca Winters doesn't flinch beneath their gazes. She walks with her head bowed, her healer's satchel swinging softly at her side like a pendulum marking time for her sins. The whispers follow her. Traitor. How dare she come back after what her bloodline did? She keeps walking. 27 steps to the old oak, where they first threw stones. 53 to the turn in the path where someone spat at her boots last winter. 112 to the iron gates that never open. Her fingers tighten around the strap of her bag. Each number is a prayer. Each breath, a vow. The great manor looms ahead, a fortress of silence carved into the mountain. Its windows are shuttered, the glass blackened from years of dust and grief. No smoke rises from the chimneys, no voices echo from the halls. It is a tomb dressed as a home. When she reaches the gate, the guard doesn't bother to speak anymore. He doesn't have to. The look in his eyes says everything. "Alpha Theo will not see you today," he finally mutters. Bianca nods. She expected no less. "Still," she whispers softly, "tell him I'll return tomorrow." And she turns away, descending the same path she climbed, her breath a faint ghost in the morning cold. Behind her, a young wolf tugs on his mother's sleeve. Why does she keep coming? "Because she has to," the mother answers, voice low. After what her pack did, someone has to. Serin has malading. She doesn't cry anymore. Not in front of them. Not even when the memories claw their way to the surface, the fire, the screaming, the night her family's betrayal turned her world to ash. The Winters pack had once been healers, protectors, but when Silas came, with his smile sharp as a blade and his promises dripping with honey, everything changed. He said it was for unity, for strength, for love, and they followed him into ruin. Bianca had loved him, once. Loved the man who whispered she was his moonlight, his salvation. But love under enchantment is a lie wearing perfume. When the spell broke, she woke to blood, to the sound of wolves tearing each other apart. Her pack became the name mothers used to frighten their pups. "Obey, or the Winters will come for you." And now here she was, the last of them who dared to seek forgiveness. She looks up at the dark windows of the Blackthorn Manor. Some say its master is dead. Others whisper he's alive but cursed, blind, broken, and drowning in the same poison her pack once unleashed. If that's true, then her fate is simple. She will heal what her blood destroyed, even if it kills her. Penance is not meant to be easy. Redemption never comes without pain. She adjusts her cloak against the wind and keeps walking. Night falls early in the north. By the time Bianca reaches the foot of the hill again, shadows already blanket the valley. The village lights flicker below small, warm dots of life she no longer belongs to. At the edge of the woods, she turns back once more. The manor stands silent, its silhouette cutting against the moon. For a moment, she thinks she sees movement, a flicker in one of the upper windows, a shadow pacing behind the curtains, a figure tall and still. Her heart skips a beat. Maybe it's him, maybe the stories are wrong. But when she blinks, the shadow is gone, swallowed by the dark. Bianca exhales a trembling breath. "Tomorrow," she whispers to no one. "He'll see me tomorrow." The wind answers with a hollow sigh, sweeping across the empty grounds. And high above, in the manor where the light never reaches, something stirs, a wolf, long caged, its heart pulsing with fury and memory. It knows her scent, it remembers her voice, and for the first time in months, the Alpha wakes. The Blackthorn Manor doesn't sleep. Even when the fires are out and the candles have burned to wax ghosts, something inside the walls continues to breathe quiet, restless, alive. Theo sits in the dark, the way he always does. The curtains are drawn, the room lit only by the dim red glow of the embers in the hearth. They cast long shadows across the scar that runs from his temple down to his jaw, the only reminder of the night his world ended. A bottle of whiskey sits untouched beside him. He doesn't drink anymore, not because he's sober, but because numbness no longer requires effort. Outside, the wind moans across the stone arches. Wolves answer in the distance, loyal, patient, waiting for an alpha who no longer leads. Theo doesn't rise. He hasn't left this room in days, maybe weeks. He used to keep count, until he realized time has no meaning when every dawn feels the same. The only thing that changes is the silence. Some nights it's heavier than others, thick enough to choke on, whispering names he refuses to remember. And tonight, it whispers one louder than the rest. Bianca. He closes his eyes, jaw tightening as the memory slides like a blade through his chest. Her voice, her scent, the look in her eyes that night before the fire took everything. He should hate her. He's tried. Gods, he's tried. But hate is a flame that needs air, and there's no air left in this house. It's nearly dawn when Celine knocks softly on his door. The patrols saw her again, she says through the crack. She came to the gates. Theo doesn't look up. Then tell her to stop. She won't. I don't care. Celine hesitates. She carries healing herbs with her, the same ones she used to. Enough. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the room like a blade. Celine's hand tightens on the doorknob. You can't keep doing this. The curse isn't gone just because you locked yourself away. He finally turns, his eyes catching the faint light. It's contained, he says. That's all that matters. Celine's lips tremble. You're dying, Theo. He doesn't answer. Because she's right. The black veins that creep up his arms every full moon are proof of it, the mark of the curse that devours every alpha of their line. He thought it would end with him, and maybe it still will. When she leaves, he stares at the window, at the faint smear of light breaking through the horizon. Dawn. Again. The same endless punishment for sins he never committed but inherited in blood. Later that morning, Theo walks the grounds for the first time in weeks. The snow crunches beneath his boots, the cold air biting his skin, a small reminder that he's still alive. The world smells different after being locked away. Sharper, crueler, almost too clean. At the edge of the forest, the scent hits him. Soft, familiar, her. He stops breathing. Bianca. The name coils in his throat like a secret he shouldn't know. His wolf stirs beneath his skin, restless and alert. He looks toward the distant path winding down the hill, the one the villagers avoid at night. There, faint against the horizon, a figure moves slowly, wrapped in a pale cloak. Her gait hasn't changed. Careful, determined, always carrying more guilt than her shoulders can bear. Theo exhales a low growl, half warning, half confession. He told himself he'd forgotten her. He told himself she was just another ghost in a long list of regrets. But ghosts don't make his heart race. That night, he dreams again, of fire, of betrayal, of her voice breaking as she whispered, I never meant for it to end this way. He wakes with a start, sweat cold against his skin, the wolf inside clawing at the walls of his chest. Outside, in the dark, a single howl echoes low and mournful. It's hers. He knows it without question. He sits up, eyes burning with something between pain and longing. Why did you come back? He murmurs to the night. But the only answer is silence, and the hollow beat of his own heart, counting down to the day the curse will finally take him. Bianca returned the next morning, before the frost had melted from the grass. The valley was white and still, the air so thin it almost hurt to breathe. Every step she took left a trail behind her, proof she'd tried again. The guards didn't speak this time. They only looked at her, uncertain whether pity or fear was the right emotion. I need to see him, she said softly, her voice trembling but steady. The Alpha doesn't take visitors. I'm not a visitor, she answered, and the words surprised even her. A pause. Then the gate creaked open. The manor looked different in daylight. The vines had grown wild across its stone face, its broken windows glinting like old wounds. Somewhere behind those walls was the man who used to command storms with a single glance, now reduced to whispers and shadows. Bianca stepped forward. Each step echoed with the sound of memory the night she'd watched the fire consume the Winterwood Temple, the scent of smoke and blood mixing in her lungs, the sound of his voice shouting her name before everything fell apart. She didn't come here to beg forgiveness. She came because she couldn't live with silence anymore. Inside, the manor smelled of dust and pine. Her footsteps were muffled by the age of the place, thick carpets, faded tapestries, portraits of long-dead alphas staring down with judgment carved into their eyes. She found Celine in the main hall, the only light coming from a single window cracked open to the snow. He doesn't want to see anyone, Celine warned. Bianca's throat tightened. He has to. He's dying. Any matter. What is no brown? Celine's expression softened. but there was a sadness there, the kind of sadness that had learned to live inside her bones. You think I don't know that? Every night I hear him fight the curse. Every dawn I clean the blood off the floors before anyone else wakes. Bianca's hands trembled. Then let me help. Celine studied her in silence. You can't fix what the moon has claimed. It takes. And it doesn't give back. Then let it take me instead, Bianca said quietly. Maybe that's the balance. Celine's eyes widened, something like fear flickering across her face. Don't say that where he can hear you. But it was too late. From the shadows of the hallway, a voice like gravel and thunder spoke tired, furious, beautiful. He already did. Bianca froze. Theo stepped from the dark, coat draped across his shoulders, his gaze sharp enough to cut through every word she'd prepared. You shouldn't have come back, he said. Bianca took a step toward him, her breath clouding in the cold air that seemed to cling to his presence. He looked older, not in years, but in spirit, as if the curse had carved time directly into his bones. I came because I had to, she whispered. Because you're dying and you think that absolves you? His tone cracked, low and raw. Her eyes burned. No, I just can't stand knowing I left you there, said Heterostati, a maiden deceive. His jaw tightened. The scar on his cheek caught the light, the same one her hand had touched before she ran. You didn't leave me, he said softly. You destroyed me. The words hit harder than any slap. Bianca's hands fell to her sides. Then let me rebuild what's left, Sedididisation stated. Theo laughed not cruelly, but hollowly. There's nothing left, Bianca. The curse took everything that made me human. Then let me find what's still wolf. Silence, the kind that trembles. For a long moment he said nothing. His eyes flicked down, catching the satchel in her hands, herbs, roots, the familiar vials of silver-infused remedy she once brewed for him. You still carry those, he murmured. I never stopped being what I was, she said. A healer. Not for them. For you. He looked away. You can't heal a ghost. Then maybe I'll haunt you until you remember what it feels like to live. For a fleeting second, something flickered behind his expression, recognition, pain, something dangerously close to hope. But he buried it before she could see. Get out, he whispered. Bianca nodded once, but as she turned, he reached out, fingers brushing her wrist for the first time in years. The bond flared a flash of silver light beneath the skin, the moon's mark awakening. They both froze. Theo's breath hitched. What did you do? I didn't, she whispered. The moon did. Aust and airy, and setted with spans just still. Outside, the wind howled, a single, mournful cry echoing through the forest, as if the earth itself had just remembered something it swore to forget. The bond between them had always been fragile, a thread pulled tight between forgiveness and ruin. Now, after years of silence, that thread trembled again. Theo hadn't slept since that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face pale in the moonlight, eyes wide with something between love and terror. Every time he tried to forget, her scent slipped into his dreams like smoke. He told himself it was the curse, that the mark on his wrist, the same mark glowing faintly beneath her skin, was nothing but magic binding him to the past. But deep down, he knew better. The curse didn't whisper her name when he was alone. His heart did. He walked through the manor halls before dawn, the floorboards creaking beneath his steps. Every shadow seemed to breathe her presence. Even the silence carried weight now, not empty, but waiting. When he reached the window overlooking the valley, he saw her again. Bianca stood at the edge of the forest, her cloak pale against the snow, head tilted toward the sky as if listening to something he couldn't hear. And for the first time in years, the alpha inside him stirred not with rage, but with recognition. The wolf within him lifted its head and whispered one word that shattered his restraint. Mine. Theo turned away from the window, chest tight. If the moon had given her back, it was not out of mercy. It was a warning. Bianca knew he would come to her. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. The moon was calling them both. She could feel it in her blood. She gathered herbs in silence near the frozen stream, her breath misting the air. Each motion was careful, ritualistic. She'd done this for years, not because she believed he'd ever let her heal him again, but because doing so was the only way she remembered who she was. When she returned to the cabin the villagers had lent her, she found the door slightly ajar. Her pulse skipped. Inside, the fire had gone out. Shadows clung to the walls like old fears, And there he was, standing by the hearth, every inch of him a memory she couldn't escape. Theo. He didn't speak. He just looked at her, eyes faintly glowing gold beneath the low light. She stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal. You shouldn't be here. I could say the same, he replied, voice low. This land isn't yours anymore. I'm not here for land. Then why? Her voice softened. Because you're dying. He gave a hollow laugh. So you've come to watch? She swallowed. To help. He turned fully then, the firelight catching his face, revealing the exhaustion carved into every line of him. You can't help what's already cursed. Bianca hesitated, then reached for the small pouch at her side. She took out a vial glowing faintly silver and set it on the table between them. It's wolfsbane, she said, refined. It slows the spread of the curse through the blood. It might buy you time. Theo stared at it, then at her. You think time will fix what your family broke? And not more is braided. No, she whispered, but it might stop you from dying before I can make it right. He looked away. I don't need your mercy. This isn't mercy, she said, voice trembling. It's guilt. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind howled outside, pressing against the windows. Then, quietly, Theo picked up the vial. I'll drink it, he said, if you promise never to come here again. Bianca's heart twisted. And if I don't? He met her gaze, sharp, cold, and breaking. Then I'll forget what's left of my humanity just to make sure you do. She didn't answer. She couldn't. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin felt like his footsteps. Every breath she took seemed to echo his name. By the time dawn painted the horizon pink, she gave up trying to fight it. She went outside, the snow crunching beneath her boots. The world was silent, too silent. Then, from the woods, a low growl. Her wolf rose instinctively, muscles tightening beneath her skin. A figure emerged from the shadows, massive, silver-furred, eyes burning gold. Theo. He moved slowly, cautiously, his breath visible in the cold. The curse had taken hold again, twisting the alpha's restraint into feral need. Bianca didn't run. She lifted her chin. Theo, she whispered, if you can hear me, fight it. The wolf's gaze locked onto hers, wild, desperate, half-human. For a moment, he froze. And then, instead of attacking, he lowered his head and stepped closer. Bianca reached out, hand trembling. Her fingers brushed his fur, warm, alive, real. A surge of memory hit her, laughter, the scent of pine, his voice saying her name like a prayer. Theo's breath hitched. His body shuddered, shifting, light bending around him, bone cracking, fur receding, the shape of a man emerging where the wolf had stood. When it was over, he was on his knees before her, bare skin against snow, chest heaving. Bianca, he whispered, what have you done to me? Tears filled her eyes. I reminded you. Of what? She smiled sadly. That you were never the curse. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then the moon dimmed behind the clouds, and the mark on their wrists began to glow faint at first, then brighter, pulsing with the same rhythm as their hearts. Something ancient had awakened. Neither of them knew if it would save them or destroy them both. By morning, the snow had stopped. Bianca sat by the fire in silence, her hands trembling as she poured warm water into a small bowl. The scent of herbs filled the room, sage, rosemary, wolfsbane, the same mix she'd once used to tend his wounds long ago. Across from her, Theo sat shirtless, the faint glow of the curse coiling like smoke beneath his skin. Black veins trailed down his collarbone, pulsing with light each time his heart beat. You shouldn't be this close, he muttered, voice low. She didn't look up. If the curse spreads to your heart, you won't make it through the next moon. He exhaled slowly, the sound more growl than sigh. Why do you care? Bianca dipped a cloth into the bowl and began to wipe the markings on his chest. The heat from his skin burned through the fabric. I told you, she said quietly. I'm not here to be forgiven. I'm here to make it right. Theo's hand caught her wrist gently this time. His touch was cold, but not unkind. And if making it right kills you, then it kills me, she whispered. Maybe that's justice. He did it, eh? He released her, gaze softening for the briefest moment. You were always too willing to bleed for everyone else. Her lips curved into a sad smile. And you were always too proud to let anyone see you bleed. For a moment, silence stretched between them, fragile, almost human. Then the mark on his shoulder flared suddenly, burning bright. He doubled over, growling in pain. Theo, She pressed her hand against his chest. The light from her palm flickered, silver meeting black. The curse hissed, recoiling from her touch but not retreating. He looked up at her through the pane, eyes blazing gold. "What are you doing?" She met his gaze, sharing it. The glow spread, crawling from his skin to hers, wrapping around both their wrists, one heart, one curse. When it was over, Theo collapsed against her shoulder, breath ragged. The mark on his chest dimmed. The one on hers began to burn. That night, Theo dreamed of the first wolf, the beginning of the curse. He saw the old alpha kneeling before the moon, his hands covered in his mate's blood. He begged for forgiveness, but the gods gave him chains instead. Every alpha after him would carry the same sin, and every Luna would be doomed to break trying to save them. When Theo woke, the fire had burned low. Bianca was sitting beside him, head resting against the wall, eyes half closed. A thin line of black veins traced her forearm, his curse bleeding into her. He pushed himself up, voice hoarse. "You shouldn't have done that." She stirred. "Too late. You're binding yourself to me." "I already was." He stared at her. "You don't understand what this means, and we can't sit here just to side with people of then. Quite fast, peace one." "I do," she said softly. "It means we end this together or not at all." Theo's chest tightened. "Bianca, the curse doesn't share. It consumes. You'll die before it ever lets me go." Her voice broke, but her eyes didn't waver. "Then let it try." Eden other waited. He looked away, fighting the tremor in his hands. The wolf inside him snarled, not in anger, but fear, because for the first time in years, he realized something worse than dying under the curse watching her die for him. By the next full moon, the mark on both their wrists had begun to glow in unison. Every heartbeat echoed through the bond like thunder. Every breath was shared, every pain reflected. They trained together in the old courtyard, where snow turned to mist beneath their feet. Bianca learned to channel the curse's energy to draw it out of him in waves and cast it into the earth. It worked, but each time it left her weaker. "Stop," Theo said one night, catching her as she swayed. She shook her head. "If I stop, it wins. And if you die, then maybe it finally ends." "I won't ever paste her." He gritted his teeth. "You think I can live with that?" "You already live with worse," she whispered. Theo's hands clenched at his sides. The moonlight carved silver lines across his face, lines of exhaustion, love, and helpless fury. He stepped forward before he could stop himself. His hands caught her face, his voice breaking. "Bianca, I can't lose you again." She smiled faintly. "You already did." And then, for the first time since the fire, he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a war of blood, of memory, of everything they'd lost and everything they still refused to surrender. When they broke apart, the bond between them pulsed once a heartbeat shared between two souls that had no right to keep beating. The red moon rose above them, bleeding light across the snow, and somewhere deep in the earth, the curse stirred. It had found them again. The night smelled of iron and rain. The manor walls trembled under the weight of a storm that refused to break. Inside, Bianca stood alone in the great hall, the fire dying in the hearth, her fingers tracing the edge of the crescent mark glowing beneath her wrist. Theo had gone silent again 3 days without a word, locked in the upper chambers where the curse howled the loudest. Celine warned her not to enter, but Bianca couldn't listen anymore. She climbed the stairs, the air thickening with every step. The scent of blood grew stronger, not human, not wolf, but something older. At the top, the door to his chamber was half open. She pushed it gently. Inside, the walls were clawed, the floor splattered with black ash. Theo stood near the window, shirt torn, his skin veined with streaks of silver light fighting against the darkness crawling beneath. He didn't turn when he spoke. "You shouldn't be here. I told you I wouldn't leave." Next Fader is better in section was the poop part. Solid to her flife, his laugh was hoarse, bitter. "You shouldn't make promises to dying men." Bianca stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You're not dying. You're fighting." Theo turned, then eyes blazing gold, voice breaking between man and beast. "You think this is fighting? This is losing slowly. I think it makes self-sign." The wind howled outside, slamming the shutters open. Lightning carved his silhouette in flashes of silver and shadow. For a heartbeat, she saw both man and wolf, love and ruin occupying the same skin. And then he fell to his knees. "Theo." She ran to him, grabbing his shoulders. His pulse pounded violently against her fingers, erratic, furious. The curse had reached his heart. "Let me in," she whispered. "Please, let me help." He caught her wrist, eyes wild. "If you touch me now, it'll kill you. Then we die together." "I don't not in the enter." Her hands glowed as she pressed them to his chest, light spilling into the darkness beneath his skin. For a moment, the black veins retreated, curling away like smoke. Theo gasped, eyes wide, caught between agony and awe. And then silence. The fire went out, the air stilled. When she opened her eyes, she was no longer in the manor. Darkness, then moonlight. She was standing in a field, the same one from her dreams, the one she had never spoken of. The earth beneath her feet was soaked red, and the air burned with the scent of ash. A voice whispered through the wind. "You shouldn't have come here." She turned and saw him. Not Theo, but another man. Older, crueler, with eyes like shattered glass. Silas. Her breath caught. "You're dead," he smiled. "You think curses die, Bianca. They just change their shape." He stealthed again. "Anyone has built could head of the con." He stepped closer, his form flickering between man and smoke. "Do you even know what you healed that night, little wolf?" "You didn't save Theo. You woke me." She backed away. "You're lying." "Am I?" His smile widened. "Every curse begins with a wish. And once, long ago, you wished for him to never leave you. So the moon listened. It gave you eternity, bound in blood." Bianca shook her head. "No." "Yes," he whispered, his breath cold against her ear. "The curse isn't his. It's yours." The world shattered like glass. Bianca woke on the floor of the manor, gasping for air. Theo was beside her, unconscious but alive, the glow fading from his chest. Celine burst into the room. "What did you do?" Bianca's voice cracked. "I saw him, the one who started it." Celine froze. "Silas?" Bianca nodded weakly. "He said the curse was never Theo's to bear. It was mine." Theo woke hours later, the storm finally breaking outside. When he opened his eyes, Bianca was sitting beside him, her face pale, exhaustion painted across her features. "What happened?" he whispered. "You died," she said softly, "and I brought you back." His brow furrowed. "That's not possible." Bianca met his gaze. "Neither is love that survives a curse." He tried to sit up, but she pressed a hand to his chest. "Don't move. It's still inside us, but different now. It's not feeding on you anymore." Theo frowned. "Then what is it feeding on?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. He saw it in her eyes, the shadow curling beneath her skin, the faint shimmer of the mark spreading further up her arm. "No," his voice cracked. "Bianca, no. It's okay," she whispered. "Maybe this is how it ends." "I was not taking sedate." He grabbed her hand, shaking his head violently. "No, it ends when I say it ends." Their bond flared, light blinding, filling the room like fire. He poured everything he had left into it. Strength, rage, love. The mark burned brighter, until the curse screamed between them, two halves fighting to become whole. And then silence again. Outside, the snow began to fall once more. Theo cradled her against him, his forehead pressed to hers, breath ragged. "If this is mercy," he whispered, "then I don't want salvation." She smiled faintly through the haze. "You never did." The days after the storm were quiet, too quiet. Bianca barely left her room. The curtains stayed closed, her reflection dimmed by the frost-covered glass. Each time she blinked, she saw the same thing, the shadow of Silas, whispering from the edges of her vision. The curse had changed. It no longer screamed in Theo's veins. Now it whispered through hers. She told no one, not even Celine, not even him, but Theo knew. He felt it every time their eyes met, a shift in the air. A faint echo of his own pain mirrored back at him. When she smiled, it looked borrowed. When she touched him, her hands were cold. That night, he stood outside her door, hand hovering over the wood, unable to knock. On the other side, Bianca sat on the floor, back pressed against the same door, her heart pounding in rhythm with his. Neither spoke, neither moved, but they both knew something had begun unraveling. The fire had gone out. The ghosts had taken its place. It started with whispers. At first, faint like echoes of wind through empty halls. Then clearer. Voices she didn't recognize, murmuring things she didn't want to hear. "He was never yours. You wanted eternity. You got it. Now pay the price." Bianca pressed her hands over her ears, shaking her head. "Stop. What of the sapmen and talons the sames, how promor men of things to aperded with prosed by the tasides for Collins." The set of the sapmen in the stared. The mirror across the room rippled, her reflection smiling when she wasn't. Its eyes glowed faintly silver, the same hue as the curse. The door burst open. Theo was there before she could speak, his presence filling the room like gravity. "What happened?" She gasped for air. "It's inside me. I can hear him." Theo crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders. "Silas?" She nodded, tears streaking down her face. "He's watching. Through me." Theo's wolf surged beneath his skin. "Then I'll tear him out." "Ate next." He turned toward the mirror, claws threatening to surface, but she caught his hand. "No. If you break it, he'll move to you again. That's what he wants." He froze. "Then what do we do?" Her voice trembled. "We finish what he started." Theo stared at her. "You're talking about killing yourself." After solve. "I'm talking about ending the curse." He shook his head. "Not like this." She smiled weakly. "Then how, Theo?" "Every time I breathe, he breathes too. Every time you touch me, he listens." Theo looked at her as though she were already half gone, and maybe she was. Theo stayed by her side after that. He moved her to the sunroom, the only place in the manor that still remembered warmth. He kept the fire burning day and night, afraid of what would happen if darkness touched her too long. Sometimes she slept. Sometimes she whispered things in her sleep, not her own words, but his. "You swore forever, Bianca. You promised me the moon." Each time, Theo would take her hand and whisper back, "She promised me first." The curse grew stronger. The bond flared, brighter, wilder, until their veins glowed through their skin like molten threads. Celine found them one morning, both unconscious by the fire. She saw the light binding them, one line of silver running from his heart to hers, and fell to her knees. "The prophecy," she whispered, "the wolf and the ghost." She remembered the words written in the temple ruins years ago. When the cursed Alpha meets the haunted Luna, one will burn and the other will fade, but their love will unmake the moon. Celine looked at their faces, peaceful even in pain, and realized what the prophecy truly meant. They weren't meant to survive. They were meant to end everything. It began with silence, not peace, the kind of silence that comes before the world forgets how to breathe. The sun died earlier that evening, swallowed by clouds heavy with crimson light. The air shimmered, the wind stilled, and far above, the moon began to bleed. Theo stood on the balcony of the manor, eyes lifted to the sky, watching the color drain from the stars. His wolf paced beneath his skin, uneasy. The curse hummed like a living thing, restless and hungry. Behind him, Bianca appeared pale, fragile, wrapped in a shawl too thin for the cold. Her eyes glowed faintly silver, the mark on her wrist pulsing in rhythm with his. "It's happening," she whispered. Theo turned. "No, not tonight." She smiled, soft, tragic. "You can't stop the moon from rising." The air between them crackled, charged with everything left unsaid. He wanted to hold her, to promise her safety, to lie and say that love could outlast fate. But the red moon didn't care for promises. A howl rose from the forest low, echoing, ancient. The wolves had sensed it too. Bianca stepped closer, her hand brushing his. "If it takes me, don't follow." Theo gripped her hand tighter. "I already did, Bianca. The day you were born under my moon, I started following." Her breath caught. "Then at least don't regret it." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time, saw not the healer, not the ghost, but the woman who had chosen him even when the gods turned away. "No," he said, "never you." The red light flooded the valley, and somewhere deep inside the earth, the curse woke fully. The storm broke at midnight. Flames erupted in the courtyard, twisting into shapes that weren't made of wind or fire, but memory. Theo and Bianca stood in the center, surrounded by the wolves of his pack eyes glowing, waiting for their alpha's command. But the alpha was already slipping. The curse poured from him like smoke, forming a shape Silas's shape grinning through fire. "So predictable," the spirit sneered. "You begged for mercy, and when you didn't get it, you turned love into your weapon." Theo's claws broke through his skin. "You have no claim here, don't I?" Silas laughed, voice echoing across the burning sky. "She made the wish. You made the blood. I am the bond between them." Bianca stepped forward, ignoring the flames licking her dress. "Then break it. Take me, and leave him." Silas's smile faded. "You think I'd spare the one who carries my heart?" Animated costed. Theo lunged, but the spirit caught him midair, slamming him into the ground with invisible force. The curse flared, dark veins crawling back across his chest, suffocating his breath. "Stop!" Bianca screamed, running to him. She knelt, hands shaking as she pressed them over his heart. "Fight it!" he lauded as her with. Theo's eyes met hers, glowing faintly gold through the shadow. "Not if it costs you." Bianca's tears fell, hissing against his burning skin. "Then let it cost me." The red moon above brightened, blinding, merciless. The curse inside her roared, clawing its way free. She screamed as the air shattered, light spilling from her palms like blood turned to fire. And for a moment, just a moment, the spirit faltered. Theo reached for her, his voice barely a whisper. "Bianca." She looked at him, eyes silver and burning. "Let me do this." He shook his head weakly. "I can't lose you again." "You already did," she whispered, the same words she'd said under the first moon they shared. Then she stood, walking straight into the fire. The forest trembled as light devoured the darkness. Every tree, every stone, every breath seemed to freeze in time. Bianca's figure glowed white against the red inferno, her hair whipping in the wind, her body trembling as the curse tried to tear itself from her soul. Silas screamed, not in anger but in fear. "No mortal can contain it. He is strong." "Then I'll die trying," she answered, voice breaking like the world around her. Theo crawled toward her, fighting the weight pressing down on him. "Bianca, stop." She looked back one last time, tears streaming down her face, light spilling from her eyes. "Tell them you were loved, Theo. Even if it kills me, tell them." And then the light exploded. The world went silent. The moon cracked. The fire died. When the smoke cleared, the valley was gray, snow turned to ash. Theo staggered to his feet, calling her name again and again. His voice echoed off the ruins until it broke. There was no answer. Only a faint glow where she had stood, the mark of the curse burned into the earth, pulsing once like a fading heartbeat, then disappearing. Theo fell to his knees. The wolves began to howl, not in mourning, but in reverence. The curse was gone, but so was she. He lifted his face to the broken sky, the red moon fading into pale white dawn. "If this is what mercy feels like," he whispered, "then may the gods never forgive me." 3 days after the red moon fell, the valley still smelled of burning. The snow had melted into black slush, streaked with ash and streaks of silver dust, remnants of the curse that had devoured their world. Theo wandered through the wreckage, silent. The wolves followed at a distance, their heads bowed, their paws leaving trails of dark water where the snow once was. He hadn't spoken since that night, not to Celine, not to anyone. Every step felt like walking through the hollow chest of a god long dead. The manor was gone. The forest stood half-ruined, the air still humming faintly with magic that had no place left to go. But the mark on his wrist remained, a small crescent of silver, pulsing faintly, like a memory refusing to die. He knelt in the clearing where the curse had ended, pressing his palm to the cold earth. "She was here," he whispered, voice raw. "I felt her." Celine stood behind him, eyes glistening. "The light took her, Theo. Whatever she became, she's not gone." He shook his head. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not." Celine's voice trembled. "The moon has phases, brother. It fades. It returns." Theo looked up at the sky, gray, empty, unkind. "Then why can't I feel her anymore?" And he stated created. "There's life to be the craft to the prast, and set of the stand, and he disagreeals, and effaced Bibel down, and he to save the praxis the stander. Because love," Celine said softly, "is the only curse that never leaves quietly." That night, Theo dreamed again. He was standing in the field beneath a silver sky. The air was still, the grass swaying in slow motion. And there she was, Bianca barefoot, her hair flowing like water, her eyes calm, unafraid. He didn't move. He was afraid that if he did, she'd vanish. "You're dead," he whispered. She smiled. "No, I'm what's left when everything else dies." He took a step forward. "Come back." "I can't." "Can't it, eh? Then let me come to you." Her smile faded. "You can't follow where I've gone. You have to live, Theo." He shook his head. "I don't know how." Bianca lifted her hand, light shimmering from her fingers. "Then remember. Remember the fire. Remember the mercy. Remember me." Theo's chest tightened. "If I do, it will destroy me." She touched his cheek, her warmth melting the frozen air around them. "Then let it destroy the part that can't forgive." He wanted to hold her, to pull her into his arms, but when he reached out, his hand passed through light. "Bianca, everything into our love." Her voice echoed through him, soft, infinite, like a prayer. "When the moon is new, look for the first light. I'll be there." He woke with tears burning down his face, the mark on his wrist glowing faintly against his skin. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall again, white this time, not ash. The weeks that followed were made of silence. Theo rebuilt the manor with his own hands, stone by stone, though he never meant to live there again. He said it was for the pack, but everyone knew it was for her. Every dawn, he walked to the clearing where she'd vanished. He never prayed. He only listened. And sometimes, when the wind came from the north, he swore he heard her voice a whisper, soft as falling snow. Celine tried to reach him once. You can't build a life out of ghosts. And he did. He looked at her, eyes hollow. Then tell them to stop haunting me. She had no answer, because she, too, heard the echoes. The moon stayed pale for months, never waxing, never waning. The world had forgotten its rhythm. Until one morning, as Theo stood in the courtyard, a single beam of light broke through the clouds. It struck the ground before him, bright and pure, and for an instant he saw her shadow faint, shimmering, smiling. He reached for it, whispering, "Bianca." The light warmed his skin, then faded, but it left something behind, a single white feather, soft as breath, glowing faintly in the palm of his hand. Theo closed his fingers around it. For the first time in months, his heart didn't hurt when it beat. He looked up at the horizon, where dawn had begun to bleed silver through the night, and he thought, maybe she kept her promise after all. The winter passed quietly. The wolves learned to howl again, softer this time, not in grief, but in memory. Theo lived between the ruins and the reborn valley, rebuilding not for glory, but for purpose. The land had begun to heal. The air no longer burned with the scent of ash, but nothing filled the silence she left behind. Sometimes he spoke to her anyway. When the sun dipped low behind the trees, he would stand by the frozen stream and whisper, "I kept my promise. I'm still here." He didn't expect an answer. Until one night, when the new moon rose, invisible yet heavy, the wind shifted. A single whisper brushed his ear, carried on the snow. "You always were." Theo froze. The air shimmered, faint light dancing above the water's surface. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a dream. It was her, or the memory of her, woven into the light itself. He reached out. The light flickered around his hand, warm like breath. Bianca's voice, soft and distant, filled the night. "I told you the moon remembers." Theo closed his eyes. "And I never forgot." When spring came, Theo planted a garden where the curse had ended. He filled it with white lilies, moonflowers, and the small herbs Bianca once used to heal him. Each night, he would light a candle and sit in silence among them. The wolves never entered the garden. They seemed to understand it wasn't theirs. One evening, as the moonlight spilled across the flowers, he noticed something new. The petals of one lily glowed faintly, a shimmer like breath trapped in glass. He touched it, and suddenly, the garden came alive with light. Every bloom pulsed with silver fire, illuminating the night like 1,000 stars reborn on earth. Theo stepped back, eyes wide. "Bianca?" "Entellend." The wind stirred, brushing against his hair, and her voice came again, clearer this time, almost near. "You kept the world alive, Theo. That's how you bring me back." He looked around, his throat tight. "You're still here, always, but only because you remembered." He knelt among the flowers, the glow painting his face with silver. "I built this for you." "No," her voice whispered. "You built it for hope." Months later, the moon was whole again. It rose high and full, no longer red, no longer broken, a perfect silver disk hanging above the valley. Theo stood alone beneath it, the garden behind him, the wind carrying faint traces of her laughter. He wasn't the same man anymore. The curse had marked him, but it had also freed him from hatred, from guilt, from the belief that love was meant to last only in flesh. He lifted his gaze, eyes reflecting moonlight. "You were right," he said quietly. "The heart doesn't need a body to remember." For a moment, the moon brightened a flash of warmth across his face, and in that light, he saw her silhouette one last time, smiling, peaceful, her hair glowing like the stars she'd joined. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence between them had become sacred. Theo bowed his head. "Good night, Bianca." Even as deceiver, as he turned to leave, the garden shimmered once more, every flower blooming in unison, every petal glowing like 1,000 tiny memories taking root in the world. The moon watched in silence. The wind whispered through the valley, and somewhere in the light, love remembered itself. Years later, the valley had changed. The forest had regrown, wildflowers covered the scars where fire once raged, and the wolves no longer howled out of grief. They sang instead a low, mournful hymn that the wind carried across the mountains. Theo had aged, though the years had been kind to him. His hair had silvered, his eyes softer now, not because the fire had left him, but because he'd learned to live beside it. Children played near the edge of the garden, chasing one another between the moonflowers. Among them was a girl, dark-haired, quiet, her eyes reflecting the same faint silver light that once burned in Bianca's. She ran to him, laughing, holding up a white feather. "Uncle Theo, look!" He smiled. "Where did you find that?" "In the river," she said. It was glowing. Aidedwala's tiltix. Theo knelt beside her, taking the feather gently in his hands. "Do you know what that means?" She shook her head. "It means the moon remembers," he said softly. "And it's saying good night." The child frowned thoughtfully. "Good night to who?" And something there would stand. Theo looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting a thin silver line separating light from shadow. "To someone who once loved us enough to burn for it." The girl didn't understand, not yet, but she smiled anyway, and the world felt gentler for it. That evening, Theo returned to the clearing one last time. The moon hung low, pale and kind, painting the world in quiet light. He stood in silence, listening to the wind. It no longer carried whispers or ghosts, just the calm breathing of the forest. He laid a hand on the earth where the curse had once burned and closed his eyes. "I kept it alive," he whispered. "The pack, the land, her name." A soft wind brushed against him, carrying the faint scent of lilies. For a heartbeat, he could almost hear her laugh again, that quiet, fleeting sound that had once made the whole world stand still. He smiled. "You were right, Bianca. Mercy isn't forgetting. It's remembering without pain." He looked up at the sky. The moon shimmered, brighter than it had in years. Theo breathed deeply, the chill of the night wrapping gently around him. He didn't feel alone anymore. Not really. He turned to leave, and for a moment, the light behind him shifted. A silhouette formed beside the moonlight, a woman standing among the flowers, watching him with eyes full of peace. He didn't turn back. He didn't need to. Some things were meant to be felt, not seen. On the final night of winter, the valley glowed silver again. The wolves gathered by instinct, lifting their heads as the moon rose higher, whole and unbroken. Theo stood at the edge of the garden, his hands clasped behind his back, watching the light spread across the land. He whispered, "It's time." The wind answered, gentle, steady, and kind. When the first ray of moonlight touched his face, he closed his eyes. The mark on his wrist flickered, once faint, almost invisible, then disappeared completely. The wolves began to howl, their song echoing through the valley. And in that chorus, somewhere between the stars and the earth, two voices joined, one deep, one soft, perfectly in harmony. The moon reached its peak, flooding the world in light. By dawn, the garden stood empty but peaceful. The flowers still bloomed, glowing faintly as if remembering. And on the stone where Theo once stood lay a single silver feather, shining in the new morning sun. The story had ended. But love, it seemed, had simply changed its shape. When the story fades and the moonlight softens, only silence remains. But in that silence, hearts remember. This was The Light That Remembers, a beyond-the-page original, a story about love that burned, faded, and yet found its way back through time itself. If this tale touched your heart, leave a trace, a comment, a like, a whisper beneath the moon. Every word you share helps us bring more stories like this to life, where love is not perfect but eternal. Subscribe to Beyond the Page, where every heartbeat becomes a story, and every story reminds us that love, no matter how lost, always finds its light again. Thank you for listening, and until the next moonrise, let your heart remember what the light never forgets.